So we talked yesterday about how, well, we talked day before yesterday about how there were 3 different ways to graph a line. One of them was by using the XYT chart. The next one was by using intercepts. We talked about those. And then the third one we haven't gotten to yet. We said in order to understand it, we were going to have to understand slope. And then we found out there were 3 ways to deal with slope. One of them is by using the formula for slope. So we went over how to do that yesterday. And the other one is by looking at pictures of graphs. And we talked about that yesterday, and I told you needed to work on this. Gave you some homework, and I'm sure that you did it because you're good that way. Well, now we're going to actually talk about the third way of graphing an equation. And it is by dealing with equations with slope. But there are 3 different types of equations. There's lots of 3s, I can't help it. So the first type of equation that we're going to talk about is slope-intercept. That's the one we're getting ready to talk about today. The next type of equation is point-slope. And then the third type of equation is standard. Okay? We'll talk about it next couple days. So, to start off with slope-intercept form. This is what slope-intercept form looks like. And yes, you need to memorize that. Lots of memorization in this section. Y is always Y, X is always X. What did I tell you M stood for? M is your slope. The only thing I haven't told you is what B is. And B is your Y-intercept. That's why they call it slope-intercept form. Now, you can tell it's in slope-intercept form because it's going to be y equals some sort of x plus a number. The x always comes before that number. This is the form. If they don't give it to you in that form, you have to put it in that form. You have to make it look like that so that you can use it. But let's say they do give it to you in that form, just like these 2 problems are. The answers, the way to graph it is so simple and easy when they tell you that form, because we've already learned what you need to know about it. If they give you this form, the first thing you're going to do is tell me what the slope is. Well, the slope is 2, and I told you always want it to be a fraction, so we're going to say 2 over 1. And what is the y-intercept? Well, that's 3, according to this. But I told you an intercept was really a point. So you need to make sure you write 0, 3, because that's what a y-intercept looks like. When you graph like this, you always start with the y-intercept. Because basically that's telling you a point that's on this line. So the point 0, 3 is up here. And then from this point I can follow my slope, which says we go up 2 and over 1. So from here I go up 2 and over 1. Now that I have 2 points, I can go ahead and draw my line. For this one, what's my slope? -1 over 3. And what is my y-intercept? 0, negative 2. Don't forget the minus there. That minus goes with that 2, so it's negative 2. We know that because there's not a minus in our formula up there. Okay, so I always start with my y-intercept. 0, negative 2 is down there. And then I follow my slope, which says I go up negative 1, so that's really down 1, and then over 3. So down 1 and to the right 3. Or, if you want to put the negative on the bottom instead of it being on the top, that's the same thing as 1 over negative 3. So it could go up 1 and back 3. It's the same thing, because it's going to be on the exact same line. When I go to draw my line between these 2 points, see, I'm not even worrying about lining up with that one. When I go to draw my line between these 2 points right here, it'll end up going through that one. That's how accurate this is. Just like up here, I went up 2 and to the right 1. That's the same thing as going down 2 and back 1. This is 2 positives, that's 2 negatives, which we know makes a positive. It's going to end up on the same exact line. Just like up here, it didn't matter whether my negative was on top or on bottom, it's still going to be a negative slope. Sometimes, like I told you, they don't give you the equation in slope-intercept form. You have to put it in slope-intercept form. When that happens, you have to make sure that the y is first and that the y is completely by itself. So the question is, what's keeping my y from being by itself here? Well, first of all, this 2x is, and so is that 5. I've got to get rid of the thing furthest away from the y first. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. When I do that, I get negative 5y over here, and then on this side, do I write my 10 first or my 2x? Because I can't put them together because they're not like terms. Which one do I have to write first? Well, I need to write the 2x first, because that's the form, y equals some kind of x plus a number. So I have that. Now I need to get my y by itself. What's keeping the y from being by itself? That negative 5. So I need to divide this side by negative 5. When I do, I've got to divide everything on this side by negative 5 too. So that gives me y equals, they'll cancel each other out. My negatives cancel each other out here. I end up with a positive 2 over 5x. Then my negatives cancel out here, plus 5 goes into 10 2 times, so that's plus 2. Which means my slope now is 2 over 5, and my y-intercept is 0, 2. So I can start at 0, 2, and then from there I go up 2 and over 5. Draw my line. Same thing if I went down 2 and back 5. Be right there. For the next one, they didn't put it in slope-intercept form, and it's got to be in slope-intercept form so we can find our slope and our y-intercept. So I need to move it around so that it is, which means I got to get the y by itself. So I'm going to add 5x to both sides. That gives me negative 2y. Put the x part first. 5x plus 4. Then divide everything by negative 2. Get y equals negative 5 over 2x minus 2, because 2 goes into 4 2 times. That makes my slope equal to -5/2. My y-intercept equal to 0, -2. So I start down here, and then I go down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, almost off my graph, and then to the right 2. So to make sure I get it right, I'm going to go up 5 also, and to the left 2. That way I know that I've got them lined up correctly. Now you see why you have to use a straight edge. Looks kind of rough if you don't. So ways you can get a straight edge. You can use another piece of paper, but paper tends to be kind of flimsy. You can use an index card if you have one handy. Index cards are kind of hard. You can use the side of a calculator if it's got a nice sharp edge. If it's got a rounded corner, don't even bother. That's not helpful. You can use a fingernail file. That was helpful. A ruler is good. Not necessary, but good. The edge of a book, sometimes not great, especially if you're using colored pens or highlighters or such. For pencils, the edge of a book is okay. But you get the idea. You want to use something straight that'll cover the whole area. You notice that usually when I do my graphs, they cover a whole lot of space. You don't have to go from one end to the other all the time, but you do need to make sure you get quite a nice piece in there. Usually I like to cover both axes so we can see what's really happening on both. Now, this is when you would think I would say, how about some homework? But that's not what I'm going to do. Instead, I'm going to say, how about some classwork? In fact, this classwork is classwork I'm going to answer in this video. So, go ahead and pause the video and try to do these 3 problems. I would graph A through D on this graph up here, and graph E and F on this graph down here. Okay? Go ahead and pause it. Let's see how you do. So for A, we get that the slope is 4/1, and the y-intercept is at 0, -3. So I go down here to -3, put my dot, go up 4 and over 1. Look what I found. Awesomeness. And it's see-through. That helps me line up faster. Awesome, awesome. So there's that one. Pick a new color. We'll do lavender. My slope for this one is 1/2. My y-intercept is 0, -4. So I start at -4, put my dot, go up 1 and over 2. I'm going to do another one because they're so close together, and why not? That light's messing with me some. That looks pretty. There we go. And then for C, I'll use, not orange, that's too close. We'll use green. So my slope is -4/3. My y-intercept is 0, 2. So I go up 2, and then from there I go down 4 and to the right 3. Or I could have gone up 4 and to the left 3. Now, you don't have to use as many points as I use. You don't have to use the exact same points that I use. You have to have the same line that I have. So your line has to look like this. You don't have to use these dots. So if you use just those two dots, that's fine. If you use just these two dots, that's fine. But your line has to look like this. Just like when we did the XYT chart, you didn't have to have the same points that I had. You just had to have the same line, because the line is your answer when they're asking you to graph a line. For this one, it's not in slope-intercept form, so I have to put it in slope-intercept form. I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. And then divide everything by -1 so I can get my y by itself. That gives me a positive 2 over 1x minus 5. Don't want this one to be a fraction. Do want this one to be a fraction. So my slope is equal to 2 over 1. My y-intercept is 0, -5. That's down here. And then I go up 2 and over 1. For the last two. Neither of these are in slope-intercept form either, so we're going to have to put them in slope-intercept form. So I need to get the y by itself. That means I'm going to subtract 2x, but I'm also going to subtract 8. And I'm going to go ahead and do them at the same time. So that gives me -3y is equal to -2x minus 8, and divide both sides by -3. So y is equal to a positive 2 over 3x plus 8 over 3. Only problem is we didn't want this to be a fraction. We wanted a whole number. If you can't find a whole number, you might should go for a decimal or mixed number when it comes to this particular number here for your y-intercept, because that's easier to graph. So 3 goes into 8 2 whole times with 2 left over. So that's 2 2/3. We can graph that. So that means my slope is 2 over 3. My y-intercept is 0, 2 2/3. So that means I have to start at 0 and then go up 2, 1, 2, and then another little bit. Not quite another whole bit, just another little bit. Hold on. I can't see very well on this one. So I'm going to try to draw my lines in better. Looking out here, it looks like that was one. This came from regular graph paper that I had to darken in. So this was one, this was one, this was one, and then it looks like right around there was one. You'll probably have to darken yours in too. So at 0, up 1, up 2, and that's more like a third, not 2/3. So I'm going to go up to here and put my dot. Then we're supposed to go up 2 and over 3. Well, if I go up 1, that's almost to the next one, and then up another one is almost to that one, and then over 1, 2, 3. So it's not exactly on that line. These are not going to be pretty points, but they are accurate, or as accurate as you need to be. And now you know how to deal with fractions. And then for the last one, subtract x from both sides. 2y equals negative x minus 5. Divide both sides by 2. Y equals negative 1 over 2x. Right? Right? Because that's the fraction. There was a 1 in front. And then minus 5 over 2. 2 goes into 5 2 whole times with a half left over. So I start, my slope is negative 1 over 2. My y-intercept is 0, negative 2.5. So I start down at 2 and then halfway to the next one. And then from there I go down 1 and over 2. Well, going down 1 isn't to that line. Remember, you're in a half. So I go down to that 1/2 and then over 2. That puts me here. Not supposed to have that dot. I just wanted you to see where I was headed. Down 1 and over 2. And then you can draw your line. Now, there are some times, especially when you're doing your XYT chart, that you end up with points that aren't on a line. That means you've made a mistake somewhere. And when I say you've made a mistake somewhere, it's generally in your calculations. So you'd need to check your calculations again. Here, you're never going to be able to know if you've made a mistake somewhere because you're the one counting up to the next one. So it should be a straight line all the time. So you lose some of that checking ability when you use slope-intercept form to graph. But slope-intercept form, as you can see, is the fastest and easiest way to graph. It works all the time. You never have a problem with it. As long as you remember what's in the clouds and you remember how to use slope-intercept form, graphing should be a piece of cake. Okay, homework. I know you thought you were going to get away from it. Page 394. All of them's in the practice exercises. Numbers 1, 5, 9, 13, 17, 21, 37, and 39. That's your homework for tonight. Once again, even if they're not asking you to graph something, go ahead and make sure you do it on graph paper, so when they do ask you to graph, you've already got it right there. When we get further on and you have to graph once in a while, that's when you should grab those Post-its. Now you're pretty much stuck in graphing, so we're going to go ahead and use graph paper for this section for doing homework. I will see you tomorrow, or talk to you tomorrow. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Okay.